I've been waiting to start doing video to do this post for a long time. If you look way back in February of 2011, there's a post that I did called The Worst Problem in the World. And I've been waiting to do this one because I can only describe it so well in words, but with video I can do it much better. And I call it the worst problem in the world for a reason. I believe this is, I'm overstating it a little bit, but this is really one of the worst problems in the world. This is what undermines teamwork and undermines relationships. And if you look at a lot of problems in the world, this is what is at the root of it. I'm going to oversimplify, but I think you'll see a bit of truth to it. Okay, so here's the deal. Say you're working with other people. Say it could be working with other people, but say you're working with just one other person. You'll see how it applies to other cases. So, you're here, and you want to get something done. So you want to go there. Now you're moving a certain distance according to your values. This is what you consider important. Now say you're working with somebody else. Now no two people have exactly the same values and exactly the same everything. But say you believe that you have the same values. You work on something together. They're going to make a certain amount of progress. Now, I want to show another arrow that's the same magnitude, same size, but different direction, indicating that they work just as hard, they get just as much done, but they're moving in a different direction because they have different values than you. Okay, if I've drawn it well, this is another arrow in a slightly different direction, but the same size. Now, say that after you've worked a certain amount, you reflect on how far you've come. Now you think, this is how far I've gone, I've done pretty well. Now how far has my friend or this other person I'm working with gone relative to me? Now remember back to high school how you measure distance in one direction compared to another, maybe college. What you're going to do is you're going to drop down a perpendicular and measure how far, okay. If I've done this well, I've drawn a perpendicular line here, and if you look very closely, what you can see is that from my perspective, this other person has moved this distance relative in my direction. But if you look very closely, there's a little bit here that they didn't get done. So from my perspective, this other person is almost as good as me. But not quite. But not quite, because they missed this other little bit. And why haven't they gotten this other little bit like me? Because there's this other stuff here that from my perspective is wasted effort. So this is like, this looks to me good. But for my values, this is good. This is missed. This is wasted, and to the extent I don't get the other person's motivations, they look weird. Now, the other person, they're not sitting there thinking to themselves, well, how do I look in this other person's eyes? Because from their perspective, they're going by their values. So to them, their progress all makes sense to them. From their perspective, how do I look? Or how do you look? This other person. They're not measuring themselves or you by your values. They're measuring by their values, which is in this direction. How do we do that? Well, we drop a perpendicular here from the tip of this arrow along this. And here we have the perpendicular. And from this person's perspective, it's the same thing, but the other direction. It looks to them like you've gone some good, but look, again, if you look closely, it doesn't measure up. Some missed. And from their perspective, it looks like you have wasted a bunch of effort. It looks like you're weird. And this is the root of this. If it's not understood that two different people have two different values, this can undermine relationships and even the best teams, even the best relationships. A lot of people talk about tolerance, but tolerance is to say, they're weird, but I can deal with them. The way out of this, it's not easy to say what the way out. It's easy to say what the way out of it is, but it's hard to practice it. My course, the courses that I teach in leadership go into this, in how to understand this problem and what to do about it. In two words, the way out of it is compassion and empathy, is to be able to see the world from other people's perspectives. Then you can see yourself from someone else's perspective. And you don't necessarily seem weird or your effort wasted. It's very hard to get there. It's very easy to be tolerant. You just say, well, they're weird, but whatever. To be compassionate and to be empathetic, I mean, for me, in my experience, look, I'm not the Dalai Lama, but to me, it's these practices, these exercises that I give my students to get to learn this. At the very least, to understand this, that sometime you're going to be in a situation where the other person makes no sense to you. You're going to think they're crazy, you're going to think they're weird, and if you're able, in the moment, to put yourself in their perspective, to see the world from their eyes, to understand their values, that's not to say you agree with them. It's a big difference, just to understand. That'll get you very far. Now, you'll notice that when people are very, very different, this is not so much a problem. If the Pope sits down with the Dalai Lama, they get that they believe different things and they accept that. That's okay. It's when you have someone like who believes in one religion and someone else who believes in the same religion except one tiny little difference, that's where you get things like 100-year wars that go on for a long time and people can't get past. Anyway, for years I've been meaning to do this video on what I consider the worst problem in the world. Said slightly in jest, but not completely. So look out for it, and hopefully you'll be able to be aware of it and use it to increase your empathy and compassion. So good luck.